Hey guys, welcome back to Supposedly Fun. I'm Greg. Now, yesterday I talked about my favorite books from childhood. It only makes sense then today to talk about my least favorite books from childhood. There are not many books I did not like as a kid, but the ones I did not like, I really, really hated. Now, just FYI, my dog Jamie is just out of sight right here, and my dog Guinness is walking in the room right now. So if you hear noises from the dogs, I apologize. Let's just go with it. Now, I was a big rule follower as a kid, so you can imagine that I hated the Curious George books. Absolutely hated them. Other kids would just adore them, and they would talk to me about them. And I read a bunch of them, but I would always get really mad, and I'd be like shaking the book and saying, "The man in the yellow hat told him not to do that." And then he'd get in trouble, and it'd be like, "Well, you know, the man in the yellow hat told you no." And I really couldn't handle those books at all. In a similar vein, I really didn't like The Cat in the Hat because he came into their house and he just started causing trouble and making a mess. And then he did help clean it up in the end, but it just made me mad. He came in and he caused trouble. So I absolutely hated The Cat in the Hat and the Curious George books. They completely went against the rule follower instinct that I had as a kid, and I still have that a lot. And then I was also a really picky eater, so I absolutely hated Green Eggs and Ham. And it's funny that there are two Dr. Seuss books on this list, because other than those two, I really loved pretty much everything Dr. Seuss a lot. My favorite was the ABC book, but we're not talking about favorites. Anyway, yeah, I was a picky eater, so people would constantly bring up Green Eggs and Ham to me and say, "Well, you should try it, you might like it." And I'd be like, "Well, actually, Sam I Am should have left him alone if he didn't want to eat the Green Eggs and Ham." And yeah, so it just felt like I was constant. I think my main resentment about Green Eggs and Ham was that it was used as a weapon against me because I was a picky eater, and it made me resentful of the book itself. Now, because I'm a rule follower, it probably comes as no surprise that I also really didn't like Where the Wild Things Are. And I like other books by Maurice Sendak. I just, there's something, let the wild rumpus start is the famous line that most people absolutely love from this book. And I'd be like, well, you can keep your wild rumpus to yourself. I'll be over here quietly reading. Yeah, did not like Where the Wild Things Are at all. And, the other thing I really didn't like is pretty much any of the original fairy tales with the unhappy endings that they had. Like Little Red Riding Hood, when the grandmother and Little Red Riding Hood get eaten by the wolf. Any kind of fairy tale that ended with somebody being put in a pair of slippers that make them dance forever until their ankles bleed. And I did not like that stuff. And one of the other ones that really got me is the Little Match Girl, because it was so sad. I came up with my own ending for that story, and I convinced myself that that's the happy ending, that's what actually happened. Somebody helped the little girl, and she ended up rich, and almost like Harry Potter. That's how the Little Match Girl went in my head. But I really didn't like the unhappy endings that came with a lot of the original fairy tales and the Little Match Girl. And really, those are the only ones I can think of that I just disliked as a kid. And like I said, for those, I got angry every time I read a Curious George book. And I think my sister wanted to go to see the movie when it came out a while back, and I was like, hard pass. I'm not doing it. But you have fun. So those are the books that I hated to read when I was a kid. If there's anything that you hated to read when you were a kid, I'd love to hear it. Let's talk about it. If you think I'm crazy for disliking the Curious George books as much as I do, let me know. We can agree to disagree. And if you are subscribed, thank you for that, and thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you are not subscribed, I hope you enjoyed this enough to hit subscribe or check out some of my other videos. Like I said, I did my favorite books from childhood yesterday, and I will be back. Until then, happy reading.